Hey, welcome back everyone into the Wells Tech Garage. This is episode number 6 of our little mini series on the Toyota 4Runner, and something must have gone right because I was able to actually make it back into the Wells Tech Garage. Alright, so if you missed the first 5 episodes, make sure to check them out. We talk about what the problem is with this thing and how to diagnose and repair it. This episode tonight will be the series finale. We're going to be just verifying that the vehicle is fixed, okay? So I have hooked up right now cam and crank sensor inputs from the PCM, and then I also have an amp clamp and a trigger hooked up to cylinder number 4. So we're going to do a relative compression test again, as well as cam and crank signals out of our PCM. So why don't we get right into this? So let's start with relative compression. This is our relative compression test from before. And if you remember, we saw every other cylinder on this thing was low on compression, right? And every other cylinder on this thing was on bank 1. It would go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, excuse me, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the way the firing order goes on this Toyota. And if you guys ever have any question about your firing order, go out to wellsve.com, go into the catalog, search by vehicle, and we'll just verify our firing order one more time to make sure that I said it right. So we'll build our vehicle right here, and we'll go down to firing order, and we have a 4-liter V6. And there we go, coil and plug. 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6, and then our firing order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we look at our picture again, cylinder 4 is the one that I'm triggering off of. So 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 5, 1, 3 are all on bank 1. So that was our problematic side. So why don't we take a look at what exactly this looks like right now. Turn our amp clamp on, and I'm just going around the battery cable, and I already have our trigger back probed into our ignition coil. So let's grab the current clamp, and we are on 2000 amp mode. Perfect. Let's grab and adjust our amperage, and let's turn on channel 2. Let's go 10 volts on channel B. And all right, we're at 500 milliseconds per division. Let's take a peek at what this looks like. I have already pulled the fuel pump fuse just to save some time here, so we don't have to, drain the entire fuel rail back out of fuel. I did pull that already, so we can get a nice even cranking period. Because when you're doing relative compression, you want that cranking window to be consistent. You want it to remain the same across that entire episode of cranking. That way we get a decent pattern. So I think I'm going to use this pattern right here. Let's try and clean this up a little bit. This is messy. So let's take and scale our offset here. Try and make that look a little bit nicer. Let's scale this one down a bit. There we go. Now we're starting to get there. Bring this up, and let's just look at a couple of our revolutions here. Alright, so we got 2 complete engine revolutions, so we're triggering cylinder 4 each time. Let's just bring a cursor down here, and we'll see that even though it's not perfectly straight across, we are seeing a more consistent compression across all these cylinders. I wouldn't say that we are low on any specific cylinders. Maybe cylinder 5 might be showing a little bit low here. Alright, so it's looking like cylinder 5 is maybe a hair low on compression as compared to the other cylinders. But what we're not seeing right now, and it's important to show, what we're not seeing is this consistent 3 cylinders all lower than the other 3, okay? It's not a consistent repeating pattern. We're kind of all over the place, and that's why we need to get a nice clean pattern. So let's see if we can get something a little bit cleaner here. See if we can get about the same RPM across the entire pattern. So right there, it almost tried to sound like it was trying to start. You could hear it speed up a little bit there. Let's try it again. All right, that felt like it sounded like it was pretty consistent. Take a peek. So it does look like cylinder 5 is maybe just a hair low on compression on this engine. It's possible with 150,000 on it that it's just a normal concern. We're not setting misfire codes or anything like that out of cylinder 5, so I'm not really worried about it. What I wanted to show here is just the fact that this no longer looks like this. We don't have these 3 smaller peaks and 3 bigger peaks. We don't have one bank that's lower on compression than the other. So that's looking pretty darn good. I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this relative compression. I think this is looking great. So why don't we, let's reset the scope. I'm going to bring everything back to, let's go here. And now I'm going to get our cam and crank sensors hooked up. Okay, because that's where we really were able to dig into this thing and really figure out what it was. So that's what we're going to start with. And I have all the test leads already back probed at the PCM, and they should be exactly the same as they were last time. I also have in the background right now, we'll bring them up in a minute, but I have the old patterns from last time. All right, so we'll go 10 volts. Let's throw in some labels. We'll go 10 volts, and we'll go, don't remember what we had set for that one. I think it might have been 20. Let's grab this, camshaft, Hall effect. This will be bank, oops. This will be bank 1. Then we got camshaft, Hall effect. This will be bank 2. And then crank shaft inductive. This is an AC signal. Alrighty. So let's try and set up our offsets here like we did last time. Actually, let's take a peek at the one from last time. Now this was the known bad. This was our problem. This is the way the vehicle was. Here's the whole pattern. This is how we were when this thing came in originally, right? Our timing was off here. We looked at that multiple different ways and determined that the timing was off. We determined that it wasn't jumped, but the timing chain itself was stretched because we were not out 20 crank degrees. We were only out slightly, roughly 10 or so, roughly half of a tooth out of stretch. So what is our window looking like here? Looks like we're 5 volts up at the top. This is probably going to be a 20 volt window for our crank sensor. So what I'm trying to do right now, guys, I'm just trying to mirror these two so they look exactly the same. That way we can provide consistency. And let's take this and go ×2. Okay. So I'm going to put those two signals right on top of each other, and I got to put the fuel pump relay back in. There we go. I'm going to cycle the key a couple times to repressurize the fuel rail. And we should be able to fire this thing right up. All right, we're definitely collecting a pattern. Even though it's a mess right now, we'll use this to, we'll zoom in on this in just a second. Wait for our idle to stabilize. I think that's good enough. We'll stop it there. All right, let's zoom in and see what we got. Now, I'm going to start by looking at this spot where we're missing our two teeth right here. I want to see where our patterns line up across against that. This again is our known bad or our original pattern. Let's take a look at our new one. So they cross at this gap. It's either going to be this gap or this gap. I'm thinking it's going to be the blue one here. Let's take a peek. Hey, sure enough. So as you guys can tell, it might be hard to tell because these guys are layered directly on top of each other. Look at that. So both signals are definitely there, as you guys can see by me moving this around. Look at how perfect that looks. These things are sitting directly on top of each other like they're supposed to be. If you remember in that Toyota diagram, and here it is up on the screen, it was hard to tell exactly where they were supposed to line up against the crank, but by looking at it and then when we put it into that paint program and drew the lines, we could tell that they were supposed to be lining up on top of each other. And that's exactly what we have here. They're lined up right on top of each other just like they're supposed to be as compared to this right here. What's also interesting is that both of these signals are crossing on our swing back up here, okay, on our crank signal back up. And again, nothing underneath this 0 line matters. Okay, here's our 0 line for our crank signal. Nothing underneath this line matters because our computer doesn't see it anyways, but I just like to see where it crosses, and you can see that this is significantly different looking than this. We're way back over here. All right, we're crossing way over here, so it's a huge difference compared to this. All right, and remember, we were only setting a code for bank 1, P0016 bank 1 correlation, because this thing wasn't quite as far out of time for bank 2, and that's why we didn't code for it. But you can tell that bank 2 is also slightly out of time, and we can look at that in comparison to our new known good. Now this is a known good with a brand new chain, brand new tensioners, brand new guides, brand new idler sprocket in there, brand new crank sprocket at the bottom. I mean, this thing is about as good as it's going to get. And if we compare this then to our known good that we pulled in, that I had that other one, that had 200 and I think that was like 230, 240,000 miles on it. You can see on that one, that's this one right here, our signals aren't exactly perfect on there, but they were still passing. Okay? So you can tell that they're, you know, right around here instead of over here. All right, so our signals, here's our new known good. This is our new vehicle. Excuse me, not new, but our new parts on our vehicle. This here is our bad. This is when the vehicle came into us with a P0016, and then this was a known good different vehicle. So by the looks of this known good other vehicle, I'm going to say that this thing is on its way out. It's not failing yet, but it's definitely not perfect, okay? So someday down the road, this customer may start to set cam crank correlation codes, okay? But our engine right now, with our brand new chain, is looking really, really good. You can see these things are, I mean, that's about as perfect as you're going to get when it comes to time. I mean, you don't get much closer than this, guys. I mean, we're down into the microseconds here in total time. We're zoomed way, way in. Okay, I mean, they're completely overlapping. So this looks like this motor is in time. Let's just take a look at some of our other signals quick where they cross, because see what we got. So we're just going to scroll back here. All right, this is interesting. So maybe these two are not meant to line up. So all we did was just scroll backwards just a little bit. Here we were lined up. Let's just go backwards in time a little bit. So here they were not lined up at all. Let's take a look at what it looked like in our original. So in our original, it looks like bank 2 crossed near the bottom of the trigger and bank 1 crossed near the peak of the next one on our bad, and here they're crossing almost at the same time. Okay, now if we wanted to, we could count the amount of peaks in between, but at this point it's not, I don't think it's worth the time to do that. I just want to find the spot where they both are going the same direction. They're both on the upward swing at the same time. Here we go. So as you can tell, both signals are on their upward swing at the exact same time. They're not perfectly lined up. Let's look at how it looked like on when the vehicle originally came in. So they're not perfectly lined up again. So this is when the vehicle originally came in, and this is the vehicle now. Okay, so at this point right here, it's hard to say, is this what the computer's looking at to judge our timing? You know, that's kind of what I had theorized in, what was it, class number 4, that we thought that maybe it was this spot that the computer was using. It's hard to say. You know, without actually opening up the PCM and figuring out exactly where the PCM is looking at the signals, it's really, really hard to say. And also, who's to say that these don't both line up in the same digital swing? So right about here is our 0 mark. So depending on where we're picking up our signal, it's possible that this blue line right here is above our bottom threshold. It's above that. Remember how we talked about it like a switch? It's possible that it were to be above that, and these would both be reading on that same part of the digital signal. Now, hard to say. And again, that class 4, we were talking a lot of theory and speculation of what's happening inside the PCM. So it's really hard to say, but for those of you guys that are just going out to verify that your vehicle is now in time after you did your job, after you did your timing chain job, this is what I would be looking at, guys. This is what I'm going to say that we should look at when we're timing these motors. We're going to look at the crossing point between bank 1 and bank 2 and the crankshaft position sensor before it goes to the 2 missing teeth, okay? So that's where I would say we should be looking at this thing, just because that's a good point of reference and they should be laying directly on top of each other, okay? If they are, the timing is in spec like it's supposed to be, and you will be passing your correlation code tests. Okay, so I think that's going to be about it. Time to put some miles on this thing and make sure that there's no other issues with it, because it's possible that P0016 was maybe not allowing a different test to run. I don't like to give a car back to a customer, especially one that got this much work on the same day or even next day. I like to try and get a little bit of miles on it. That way, in case it's got to run through the EVAT monitor or something like that, that way I know it at least passed. Not that I hand the keys back to the customer and the next day he has a check engine light on here. So I'm going to drive this thing for a few days, make sure there's nothing else wrong with it, and then I think we're all done. So this little mini series, we were really focused on being able to diagnose a problem, a mechanical internal engine problem, in a smarter but not harder way. And we did it electronically using a lab scope, using an amp clamp, using tests that are really not that difficult to perform. It's just a matter of understanding your wiring diagrams and then understanding what to look at once you get to your scope. Okay? So instead of pulling the valve covers and the front cover to verify timing, we were able to do it all electronically. And then, you know, in class 5, you saw all those timing marks lining up improperly at first, and then with the new chain they were all properly lined up. So this thing is good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this little mini series. I'm hoping to do things like this in the future when we have some sort of in-depth issue like this. I really had a lot of fun doing this one, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it too. So please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Search for Wells Vehicle Electronics. Links to all those channels are below in the description. And of course, if you guys ever have any questions for me, feel free to reach out and submit a comment on this video down below. Let me know your feedback and your thoughts. Otherwise, send me out an email. My email is in almost every video that we do, as well as down in the description of the video right now. So really appreciate you guys being there, and we'll see you guys next time in the Wells Tech Garage. Happy wrenching, everyone.